So in this video I'm going to talk you through inheritance, both how it works and how you can manage it if you find you need to. And we do need to manage our inheritance because if you look at our eldest son here, you can see that he's actually a leper, which is not useful for us. And our second son is actually barren. He's sterile, so he's going to have trouble having kids. So this is the beauty of CK3, and it's a thing that I think a lot of new players don't realize until too late. Remember, you're playing a dynasty simulator, not a territory simulator. So you'll build this nice big kingdom, and then suddenly you'll get to the point where your main character, your first character, is about to die, and everything seems to go mad, because the game, generally, most kingdoms in the game don't start with primogeniture inheritance, i.e. that the eldest son inherits everything. And that's true for us, because if we look at our kingdom here, our Despotate of Epirus, we can see that our realm succession is male preference confederate partition. And in-game you can hover over these to see what they mean. But broadly speaking, what this means is boys will always inherit before girls do, and our territory will all be split up when we die. Now the kingdom will stay together, but the subtitles, so the duchies, are going to split between our male children. Now, since the last video, we've actually had 2 more children, because if you remember, we were pushing to get heirs so that we could not have to worry about our leprous or our barren son from inheriting. And the good news is, since then, we've had both a legitimate son, Prince Sergius, with our wife, and an illegitimate son, Prince Joseph, with our lover. Now, I'll come back to that in a minute, but first let's look at what's actually going to happen under Confederate partition when we die. And what's going to happen is our eldest son, because we have 3 legal male heirs at the moment, our eldest son is going to get the kingdom title and the primary duchy that's associated with that kingdom title, which in this case is the Duchy of Epirus. So he's going to get the Kingdom of Epirus and the Duchy of Epirus. Now, the other sons, so in this case Prince Anastasios, and you can see this just by hovering over them, you can see it says heir to the Duchy of Kefalonia and County of Buthrum. He's going to get Kefalonia. And then our youngest son is going to get Dyrrhachium. So the kingdom will stay together, and our player character, if we were to play it like this, Prince Belisarius, would still rule everything. But he'd lose a whole chunk of his personal territory to his brothers. Now actually, that's kind of fine, that's part of the game. It's managing that is fun, it's how it works. And also remember that when we built our buildings, I recommended that what you build in terms of your primary duchy buildings is that you focus them on military levies. Now this means actually, chances are, Belisarius is going to have more troops than his brothers. So if we really wanted to reunite the kingdom after our main character's death and as we started playing as Belisarius, then we could just conquer the territory back, because we'd still have valid claims for it. And because we've got the duchy, and we're guaranteed to get the duchy that's got the most troops, we'd be fine. But that's not what we're going to do, because I do want to show you the ways that you can manage your inheritance and narrow down your choices of who's inheriting when you need to. So don't assume this is a thing you need to do all the time. I'm going to do something quite extreme here in how I approach this, but I'm doing it as an extreme way to show you the various options you've got. So let's say we want to get down to a position where only one child inherits. Now, remember that we had a lover because we wanted to increase our chances of getting kids, but also getting a good kid. So for the purposes of this, our best child, don't tell the other children, is Prince Joseph, because he is the one who did at least get an inheritable trait. But obviously he's illegitimate at the moment, so he can't inherit anything at the moment. But what we're going to do now is we're going to look at ways of removing our other children from the inheritance, so that we can get to a point where if we legitimized Prince Joseph, which we can do, it's an option for us here, we can absolutely legitimize him, that he would then inherit everything. Again, this is extreme what I'm showing you, but take little bits of this and use them yourself if you find yourself in a situation where you need to disinherit kids. So the first thing to think about is we can actually just turn around and select on a character and go, as a hostile action, we can just pick disinherit. Now this comes with a prestige cost, so a personal prestige cost to us, but also a cost in renown. So you don't really want to be doing it a lot, because renown is important to you. Renown is what allows you to buy dynasty legacies, so we can unlock things along these tracks, and they give different bonuses. So like noble veins will give us a chance to inherit good traits more, everything else. So you want to be getting these, and so you don't really want to be spending lots of renown every time you've got a character on disinheriting children. But sometimes it's just the easiest way to do it, and the benefit of that is it doesn't kill off the character. So if they're a good character who can have children, that's useful to you. Something to remember with disinheriting is it's always worth looking at disinheriting the youngest of your children before the oldest ones. Because although in this little kingdom it happens to be that all of our children are each going to inherit a duchy each, which is what dictates the cost of disinheriting, it's sometimes the case that actually maybe one kid has more duchies than the other, or titles stack up. And when that happens, the cost can suddenly go up to disinherit a character. So you'll think, oh, it's fine, it's only going to cost me 150. And then because you disinherit a character higher up the chain, they suddenly start inheriting more things. And when they inherit more things, it's going to cost you more to disinherit them again. So if you're going to use disinheriting, it's always best to start with the youngest son first. So we're going to disinherit Prince Sergios, because he's the youngest. He's also the one that we definitely want to keep alive, because he is of our dynasty, and we can give him another title somewhere and he can have more kids, and it's going to increase people in our dynasty, which is good. So let's disinherit our youngest son, Prince Sergios. We're going to keep him around. So it's going to cost us 150 renown. It's going to cost us 300 personal prestige. Now, if you look at what that's done to the inheritance, you can see now by hovering over him, he's not going to inherit everything. Means that actually, if you look at this, you can see that Prince Anastasios here is now going to inherit both the Duchy of Kefalonia and the Duchy of Dyrrachium. So we now have the issue that actually he's the one that we want to take out of succession, and we also want to take our player heir out. Now, what are the other things you can do to disinherit, to get someone out of the line of succession? Well, one of the important things to know is you can ask characters sometimes to take holy vows. Now, I actually tried this earlier with this Anastasios to see if we could get him to take some vows, and unfortunately he said no. And that's not uncommon, because actually you're kind of telling your kid to go off and join the church, and you can see here that Prince Belisarius is definitely not having any of it. Even if we used a hook on him and tried to make him do it, he wouldn't. He's got 0% chance, because he's our primary heir. So he's like, well, why would I take holy orders? I'm going to inherit all of these wonderful things. But it's always worth checking, because sometimes you get a chance. Sometimes it will work. And if it does, it's a relatively pain-free way of getting someone out of the line of inheritance. Because if they're part of the church, they can't inherit. Now, Anastasios saying no earlier to joining holy orders is a poor life choice on Anastasios' part. I'm going to be honest here, because that means we've got to resort to more extreme methods to get him out of the succession. And in this case, that extreme method starts with imprisoning him. Now, again, you don't really want to be doing this unless you're really, really sure you want to do it, because it is an act of tyranny. And that means that all of your subjects are going to lose 25 opinion of you, and because it's against our character traits, because we're compassionate, we're going to gain 40 stress. So the good news is we've got 75% chance of successfully imprisoning him, and actually, if we use our hook, it becomes 100% chance. So let's imprison him. And there we go. Anastasios is now in prison. Now, once you've got a character in prison, like this, you have options. One thing we could do is just move him to the dungeon and leave him there. And hopefully, God will deal with him at that point, because he'll get very unhealthy, and then eventually, hopefully, he'll die. How sad. But it may know he's not part of the inheritance anymore, because he'll be dead. Now, at the same time, we don't really have time for that. Because if you look, we're 56 already and we're in poor health. So I don't want to leave it to chance that he's going to die in prison. So again, just because I'm being extreme here to show you all your options, I'm going to show you what your other options are. One is, we could literally just kill him now he's in prison. We can turn around and go, right, well actually, we're going to execute you. Now, that brings enormous disadvantages to us. It's an enormous amount of stress, it spends a bunch of money, and it gains us dread. But again, it's an option. And if you're about to die anyway, you can kind of go, well, does it really matter? You know, I'm about to die. If you've taken the thing that gives you warning of your own death and you've just had the warning, it's like, well, actually, I can just kill myself. Why not? Kill my son. The other thing we can do, though, and it's worth knowing this if you've got a culture that supports it, is we do actually have the ability to castrate him, because this is something that the Byzantines can do. Now, why would we castrate him? Well, because it makes him a eunuch, and eunuchs can't inherit. You see that says may not inherit titles. Is this still nasty? Yes, because it's going to give us a ton of stress, but it's also not a sin. So we're not going to lose a bunch of devotion for it. We're going to gain some dread. He loses opinion of us. Our family lose opinion of us, unsurprisingly. But actually the rest of our court don't mind. So we're not going to gain more tyranny for castrating him. They're like, look, what you cut off your own son's balls in prison, you're weird, but that's fine. You go for it. You go for it, boss. So this is actually what we're going to do with Anastasios here. So we've castrated Anastasios, and that's taken him out of the line of succession. So again, it's just a good way of showing you what you can do. And if we look now, we can see that actually Prince Belisarios is getting every single title. Now the downside is, we're sitting here quite stressed now. But we're close to death anyway. We had to do this. We're doing it in an extreme way just to show you what we can do. And there you go. So really straight away, we're now down to just one son. So what are our options with our last son? Well, we don't have many, because we know he's not going to join the church. We could hope he dies before we do, but that's a bit chancy and unlikely. So we're probably actually going to have to choose between spending more renown to disinherit him, or probably castrating him as well. Something that's just worth being aware of is if your character has the sadistic trait, you can at that point actually plot to murder your own children. We can't plot to murder him because normal people don't plot to murder their children. But if we had the sadistic trait, we could. So it's just worth being aware that sadistic, whilst it's a negative trait, can actually be quite useful sometimes. So what are we actually going to do with Prince Belisarios? Well, I think just for the purposes of this run, for showing you what we can do and everything else, I'm actually going to do the same thing. I'm going to imprison him. Which, you know, it's not done well for us. It's given us a stress break. We've now a drunkard as well, so we're definitely going to die soon. But we have actually managed to imprison our son. And that means we can do the same thing. We can castrate him. If we had more time, we could move him to the dungeon, let him die there. But there we go. We've done the dirty on him. Now, what that actually means is right now, when that event fires, you can see straight away here that we're now very close to death. And this is because we've really ramped up our stress. We are a very stressed individual. So we're probably going to die soon. But you can also see that as it stands, because we now have no sons in our line of inheritance, our daughter is going to inherit. Princess Barbara here is going to inherit. So I kind of wanted to just show you this because it shows you how that male preference partition works. It's not that we don't have an heir now, it's that Barbara's our heir. Because now we've run out of sons in the line of succession, it's saying, right, well, who's your eldest daughter? Because they're going to inherit now instead. And that's how it's working now. So you'll also notice that now that the daughters are in play, it now considers each daughter getting things as well. So daughters are going to inherit stuff as well. Because it's now just saying, right, well, there's no boys left, so I'm going to split it over all of these 3 girls instead. So if we didn't have another son to legitimize, we'd have a problem. Because now all we've done is swapped our kingdom splitting between our sons into our kingdom splitting between our daughters. But the good news is we have Prince Joseph here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to legitimize him. And that instantly, because he's now a boy, it puts him ahead of the girls in the line of succession. Even though he was born illegitimate, he's now likely going to inherit everything. And you can see here when I hover over it, it says heir to the Despotate of Epirus, Duchy of Epirus, Duchy of Kefalonia, and 8 more titles. He is getting everything. So that's just a quick run through of an extreme way to handle your succession. Don't feel like you have to force that through every time. I don't. I think part of the fun of CK3 is letting the inheritance happen. Because remember, you're always playing a character. You're playing the dynasty head. You're not playing the country. And sometimes it's just nice to kind of see how the game plays out. And we probably could have taken some of that territory back. In realistic terms, what I would probably have done if I wasn't showing you the extreme version here is I would probably have disinherited our eldest son, kept Prince Anastasios alive, because although that's a big hit to his fertility, it's not the end of the world. You know, we can boost that and we can get round that in ways where we saw with the other characters, where when I was trying to seduce our lover, you can boost fertility in other ways. So I'd probably have kept Prince Anastasios around, and I'd only have disinherited the elder son. I may well have put his brother, Prince Sergios, into prison, because if he's in prison, it makes it easier for him to take the titles off of him after we die. But that would probably be all I would do, because I actually do want Prince Sergios around. We're probably going to give him a title if we were carrying on with this save. We'd give him a title somewhere so that he can start having kids and doing things. But that's how you deal with inheritance and some of the ways you can deal with inheritance. So as with the other videos, I hope this has been useful. If you've got any questions about inheritance or different ways to manage it, whatever else, pop on the Discord. Join me on streams on Sunday or Monday and ask questions. Not a problem. And if there's other topics you want me to add to this series, just let me know in the comments or let me know on stream, and I'll put some more videos together from further in this run. I'll keep the save so that I can keep it going if you want more tutorial videos on particular aspects of Crusader Kings. But hopefully that should get you going. That's everything to get you through your first character's reign. Have fun and let me know how much you enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.